In the bitter cold of Cedar Grove, veteran firefighter Jack Reeves thought he'd seen it all during his 23 years of service. But on this frigid December morning, as he plunges through the cracking ice of Lake Morrison to save a teenage girl, he has no idea he's about to uncover a darkness that's been lurking beneath their peaceful town's surface for decades. The rescue should have been routine. Dangerous, yes, but straightforward. Instead, what he finds in the girl's coat pocket will shatter everything he thought he knew about his community. A blood-stained key and a coded message become the first pieces of a puzzle that leads straight to City Hall, where trusted faces hide deadly secrets. What could drive a teenage girl to risk her life on thin ice on the coldest morning of the year? Before we dive deeper into this chilling mystery, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story intrigues you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Steam rose from Jack Reeves' coffee mug, swirling in the pre-dawn air of Station 7's kitchen. The ancient coffee maker gurgled its last drops, a sound as familiar to him as his own heartbeat after 23 years. His weathered fingers traced the edge of his old firefighter badge, tucked away in his locker, but never forgotten. A reminder of his first save, back when his hair was still dark and his knees didn't crack with every step. At 62, Jack was the oldest active firefighter in Cedar Grove. The department had tried to promote him to chief 3 times. 3 times he'd declined. "Can't save lives from behind a desk," he'd say, though the real reason hung in a silver frame above his locker, a photo of a young girl he'd pulled from a house fire in '99, now a doctor at Cedar Grove General. Some callings you just couldn't walk away from. The station's heavy door creaked open, letting in a blast of December air and Sarah Chen, the station's newest firefighter. Fresh out of training, she carried herself with the eager intensity of youth, tempered by an old soul's wisdom. Jack had handpicked her from the academy, recognizing something of himself in her unwavering focus. "Morning, Jack," she called out, stomping snow from her boots. "You're here early. Again." "Sleep's overrated when you get to my age," he replied, pouring a second cup of coffee. "Besides, someone's got to make sure this place doesn't fall apart before sunrise." Sarah accepted the coffee with a grateful nod, her dark eyes scanning the kitchen with the tactical awareness he'd drilled into her. "Any word on when they're fixing that leak in the equipment bay?" "City Council's still deliberating the budget." Jack's voice carried a hint of resignation. "Victoria Hayes promised it'd be approved by month's end, but she's been saying that since September." Sarah finished his thought, sharing his frustration with the council members' empty promises. The morning briefing started like any other. Captain Martinez reviewed the day's assignments, weather reports, warning of record low temperatures and ice conditions on Lake Morrison. Jack's attention drifted to the window, where heavy clouds promised more snow. Something about the morning felt different, charged with an electricity he'd learned to recognize over decades of service. It was the same feeling he'd had before the Miller warehouse collapse in '05, before the highway pileup in '12. "Chen, you're with Reeves today," Martinez concluded. "Engine 4 needs..." The alarm cut through the briefing like a knife. "Station 7, respond immediate. Possible drowning Lake Morrison. Juvenile reported through ice." Jack was moving before the dispatch finished, muscle memory taking over. Sarah matched his pace step for step, their boots echoing through the station. As they suited up, he caught her eye. "Remember your training. Ice rescues are different. One wrong step..." "I know, Jack." Her voice was steady, professional. "Time is tissue." The engine's siren pierced the morning calm as they rolled out, red lights painting the falling snow. Jack checked his thermal imaging camera, the weight of his rescue rope familiar against his shoulder. 23 years of service had taught him that every rescue was unique, every victim special. But something about this call, about this morning, whispered that today would be different. Through the windshield, Lake Morrison emerged from the snow like a ghost, its surface a patchwork of white ice and dark water. A small crowd had gathered, At the shore, pointing toward a dark shape about 50 yards out. Jack's trained eye caught the spider web of cracks spreading from a break in the ice, and at its center, barely visible, a flash of blue. A coat sleeve, perhaps, or a scarf. "Remember," he said to Sarah as they approached, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "Whatever happens out there, we're the last chance they've got. We don't fail. We can't." The cold hit them like a physical force as they stepped out into the morning, the temperature display on the engine's console reading -15. Jack tightened his rescue harness, knowing that in minutes he'd be trusting his life to these straps and Sarah's steady hands. The ice awaited, and somewhere out there, someone's child was running out of time. The badge in his locker had seen hundreds of rescues, each one leaving its mark on his soul. As he prepared to step onto the ice, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this one would leave the deepest mark of all. The thermal imaging camera pulsed in Jack's hands, its screen showing a faint heat signature through the ice. Still there, still alive. He moved with deliberate precision across the frozen surface, each step a calculated risk. The ice groaned. Beneath him, a sound that had haunted too many of his winter nightmares. "Looking at about 4 inches thick here," he called back to Sarah, his voice steady despite the stakes. "Get ready with the backup line." Through the swirling snow, he could make out her form on the shore, her hands steady on the rescue rope tethered to his harness. The crowd behind her had grown, their collective breath creating a cloud of anxiety in the frozen air. The heat signature flickered, growing weaker. 20 yards out now, the ice's complaints grew louder, a symphony of cracks and pops that spoke of imminent failure. Jack's trained ear caught the subtle changes in pitch, reading the ice like a language he'd learned through years of close calls and cold water training. 15 yards. The dark shape beneath the ice resolved into a clearer image on the thermal camera's display. A teenager by the size. Still moving, thank God. The camera, a piece of equipment he'd fought the city council to fund 3 years ago, was proving its worth yet again. Without it in this snow, they'd be working blind. "Jack!" Sarah's warning came just as he felt it, a subtle shift in the ice beneath his boots. He dropped to his belly in one fluid motion, spreading his weight. The crack that had been racing toward him stopped short, but he could see others spiraling out from where the victim lay. 10 yards. He could see her now, even without the camera. A girl, maybe 16, her blue coat a stark contrast against the grey ice. She was conscious, her head turned toward him. Their eyes met through the falling snow. "I'm coming to you," he called out, keeping his voice calm, professional. "Stay as still as you can. I'm going to get you out of there." The girl managed a slight nod, understanding. Good. A responsive victim made everything easier. The next few feet were the most dangerous. The ice around her had been weakened by her struggles, creating a web of cracks that would make approaching her nearly impossible without joining her in the water. Jack pulled the rescue sled closer, its bright orange surface scraping against the ice. 5 yards. The ice gave way. Jack's world turned to cold and chaos as he plunged through, the shock of the water stealing his breath despite his dry suit. Training took over. He oriented himself, kicked hard, surfaced. The hole was bigger now, but that could work to their advantage. "Line secure," he shouted to Sarah, though his voice sounded distant even to himself. The girl was an arm's length away now, her lips blue, her movements sluggish. Hypothermia setting in fast. "I've got you," he said, reaching for her. "I've got you." His gloved hands found purchase on her coat, and he pulled her close, securing her to his harness with practiced movements. Her skin was pale, too pale, but her eyes were alert, fixed on his face like he was the only solid thing in her world. "Sarah, start the pull." The line went taut, and they began moving toward shore. Jack kept the girl's head above water, using his body to shield her from the broken ice. She was trying to speak, her words lost in chattering teeth and frozen lips. "Save your strength," he told her. "We're almost there." but something in her eyes spoke of urgency beyond the cold, beyond the immediate danger of their situation. She clutched at his sleeve with trembling fingers, trying to communicate something he couldn't understand. The edge of the ice approached. Jack lifted her onto the solid surface first, then pulled himself up. The crowd on shore burst into applause, a sound he barely registered as he focused on getting her onto the rescue sled. Her coat was soaked through, adding dangerous weight. They needed to get her warm and fast. "Get a blanket ready," he called to the waiting EMS team, "and someone check her pockets for ID." The girl's eyes went wide at that, sudden panic breaking through her hypothermic haze. She tried to reach for her coat, but her movements were too slow, too uncoordinated. Sarah helped them across the last stretch of ice, her face set in professional concentration. But as they reached the shore and transferred the girl to the waiting gurney, Jack caught a flash of something metallic falling from the teenager's coat pocket. He scooped it up without thinking, expecting a phone or maybe a set of keys. The object was cold in his hand, and not just from the ice. A key, unremarkable except for the dark stains along its shaft, that his experienced eye recognized immediately. Blood. Old blood. And wrapped around it, protected by a plastic bag, a piece of paper covered in what looked like code. The girl was watching him from the gurney, fear and something else. Determination, fighting through the exhaustion on her face. This wasn't just another ice rescue. This was something else entirely, and Jack Reeves had just become part of it. As the EMS team loaded her into the ambulance, Jack pocketed the key and note, his mind already racing with questions. 23 years on the job had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now every one of them was screaming that this was just the beginning. "You okay?" Sarah asked, appearing at his side with a blanket. She'd seen him pocket the items, but was waiting for his lead. "Yeah," he replied, watching the ambulance pull away, "but I don't think this call is over yet." The thermal imaging camera hung heavy at his side, its screen dark now, its job done. But Jack had a feeling they'd all be needing different kinds of tools to unravel whatever mystery that blood-stained key was about to unlock. The rescue truck's cab was warm, but Jack couldn't shake the cold that had settled into his bones. Not from the ice, he'd been in colder water plenty of times, but from what lay wrapped in a handkerchief on the dashboard, a key with rust-colored stains and a note covered in precise, methodical symbols that made no immediate sense. "She didn't want anyone to find these," Sarah said, breaking the silence as they followed the ambulance toward Cedar Grove General. Her dark eyes kept darting between the road and the items, professional curiosity warring with concern. "Did you see how she panicked when you mentioned checking her pockets?" Jack nodded, reaching for the note. The paper was cheap notebook stock, but the symbols were drawn with careful precision. Whoever wrote this had taken their time. "Get us to the hospital. I want to talk to her before anyone else does." The emergency room was its usual controlled chaos, but Jack's badge and reputation got them through to where their rescued teenager was being treated. Dr. Karen Mitchell, the same girl from the photo above his locker, now a respected ER physician, met them outside the treatment room. "She's stable," Karen said, her professional demeanor softening slightly for her old rescuer. "Core temperatures coming up nicely. No signs of serious hypothermia damage. Name's Emma Thompson, 16. Lives with her grandmother on Maple Street." She paused, glancing through the window where nurses were working. "But Jack, she's got bruises, old ones, the kind that make me file reports." The implications hung heavy in the air. Jack felt his jaw tighten. "Any chance I can talk to her?" 5 minutes. She's asking for you anyway." Karen's eyes showed concern. "Whatever's going on, be careful. Something about this feels wrong." Emma Thompson looked small against the hospital pillows, dark hair damp against her pale face. But her eyes were sharp, alert, tracking Jack and Sarah as they entered. The fear was still there, but now tempered with calculation, as if she were weighing decisions. "The key," she said before Jack could speak. "You found it." Along with this, Jack placed the coded note on her blanket. "Want to tell me what's going on, Emma? Because right now, I've got a teenager who nearly died on my lake, a blood-stained key, and a message that looks like it came from a spy novel." Emma's fingers clutched the blanket. "You have to destroy them, both of them, before—" She cut herself off, glancing at the door. Sarah moved closer, her voice gentle. "Before what, Emma? We can help, but you need to talk to us." "You can't help." Emma's voice cracked. "Nobody can. I shouldn't have taken them, but I had to prove—" Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. "They'll know I survived by now. They'll come looking." "Who?" Jack pulled a chair close, keeping his voice low. "Emma, that key has blood on it. If someone's hurt you, if someone's in danger, everyone's in danger." The words burst out of her. "The whole town. I thought if I could just get proof, show someone what's happening at City Hall." She stopped again, terror crossing her face. "I've said too much. Please, just destroy them. Forget you found me. It's better that way." A knock at the door made Emma flinch. A nurse entered, clipboard in hand. "Sorry, but she needs rest, and there are police officers here to take her statement about the accident." Jack stood slowly, his mind racing. Emma's eyes were pleading with him, but not for what the nurse might think. The key felt heavy in his pocket, its secrets now burning to be told. "We'll be back," he promised, letting his voice carry the weight of 23 years of kept promises. "You're not alone in this anymore." In the hallway, 2 uniformed officers were waiting. Jack recognized them. Mike Dawson and Pete Harris, both good men he'd worked with on countless scenes. But Emma's fear, the blood on the key, the coded message, something wasn't adding up. "Jack," Mike nodded. "Got time to give us your statement too?" "Of course." Jack smiled easily. Decades of poker nights making the lie smooth. "Let me just get some coffee first. It's been a long morning." Once around the corner, Sarah spoke in a whisper. "We're not really getting coffee, are we?" "No." Jack pulled out his phone. "We're going to make some calls. That key opened something in City Hall, and Emma nearly died trying to expose whatever's behind that door." He paused, looking back toward Emma's room. "Someone was willing to hurt a 16-year-old girl to keep this quiet. We need to know what we're dealing with before those officers take her statement." Sarah's expression hardened with determination. "Where do we start?" "The key's old, probably from before the City Hall renovation in '95. I know someone who worked maintenance back then. Keeps records of everything." Jack's fingers traced the outline of the key in his pocket. "But first, we need to copy this code. Something tells me we won't get a second chance at it." As they walked toward the hospital parking lot, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just stepped onto a path that would change everything. The badge that had seen him through 23 years of service suddenly felt heavier on his chest. Whatever Emma had discovered, whatever she'd been willing to die to expose, it was big, enough to terrify a brave kid into silence. The morning's ice rescue was starting to feel like the easy part of his day. The Cedar Grove. Public Library's microfiche room smelled of dust and forgotten things. Jack sat hunched over the ancient viewer, his eyes burning as he scrolled through decades of local newspapers. Sarah had taken up position by the door, ostensibly organizing files, but really watching for unexpected visitors. "Got something," Jack muttered, adjusting the focus. The yellowed newspaper clipping from 1997 swam into view. "Local teen missing, police seek information." He pulled a worn notebook from his pocket, adding another entry to his growing list. 3 missing persons cases over 20 years, all teenagers, all declared runaways, all gone without a trace. The librarian, Barbara Wells, appeared with another stack of archived papers. Her eyes lingered on the bloody key sitting beside Jack's notes. "Found this, too," she whispered, sliding over a more recent clipping. "Last year's budget proposal. Look who sponsored the City Hall renovation." Jack scanned the article. City Council member Victoria Hayes smiled up at him from a glossy photo, her perfectly manicured hand cutting a ribbon. The same Victoria Hayes who'd been stonewalling station. "Seven's equipment repairs for months. Ms. Wells, A new voice cut through the quiet. "Mind if I join this little research party?" Jack turned to find Detective Marcus Rivera standing in the doorway, his weathered face unreadable. Sarah tensed, but Jack gave her a subtle shake of his head. He'd known Marcus for 15 years. The detective was one of the good ones. "Wondering when you'd show up," Jack said, gesturing to the empty chair beside him. "How'd you find us? Please." Marcus smiled tiredly. "Veteran firefighter pulls girl from ice, then immediately starts digging through old papers instead of filing. His report, not exactly subtle, Jack." He glanced at the articles spread across the table. "Want to tell me what we're looking for?" Before Jack could answer, his phone buzzed. A text from Karen at the hospital. "Emma asking for you. Says she's ready to talk. Hurry." Marcus read the message over Jack's shoulder. "The Thompson girl. She's connected to all this. Maybe everything." Jack gathered the newspaper clippings, carefully folding them into his notebook. "Coming with us?" The detective's dark eyes studied the scattered evidence. "Lead the way." They found Emma sitting up in her hospital bed. Some color returned to her face. She clutched a cup of tea with shaking hands, but her voice was steady. "I found the first article 3 months ago," she began without preamble, "about Jenny Martinez. She didn't run away in 97. She found something too." Jack shared a look with Marcus. Jenny Martinez, the first name on his list. "My grandmother used to work at City Hall," Emma continued. "In the archives, she had an accident last month, a fall down the stairs. But before that, she gave me her old key, said if anything happened to her, I should look in the basement storage room. Said there were records that needed to be found. Your grandmother," Marcus leaned forward, "Agnes Thompson. I remember that case. Security cameras malfunctioned that night." Emma's laugh was bitter. "Everything malfunctions around City Hall when it needs to, just like Jenny's case files disappeared. Just like the evidence from Katie Chen's disappearance in 2003. Just like Sarah Chen's sister." Jack breathed, the connection clicking. He turned to his rookie, saw the grief and rage warring on her face. "That's why you requested Station 7 specifically." Sarah's hands were clenched tight. "Katie was investigating corruption allegations against council members. Then she vanished. They said she ran away to California. She'd never—" "The key opens a filing cabinet," Emma said quietly. "Deep in the old archive room. I found documents, photos, proof of everything. But they saw me leaving that night, been watching me ever since. When I realized they knew, I panicked, tried to hide the evidence somewhere they'd never look." "Under the ice," Marcus concluded. "Risky move. Better than letting them destroy it all." Emma's voice hardened. "Better than letting my grandmother's accident be for nothing." Jack pulled out the coded note. "And this? Insurance." A ghost of a smile touched Emma's lips. "Everything I found. Encoded. Names, dates, bank accounts. My grandmother taught me. The cipher before the stairs. Said it was an old family code from her OSS days." A commotion in the hallway cut through the conversation. Jack glimpsed a familiar face through the door's window. Victoria Hayes, her council member's badge catching the fluorescent light as she spoke with hospital administration. Marcus moved first, smooth and professional. "Sarah, back door." "Jack, get the girl ready to move. I'll delay them." He paused at the door. "And Jack, that key's evidence now. Don't lose it." As the detective stepped out, Emma grabbed Jack's arm. "There's more," she whispered urgently. "The renovation project. It's not just about money. They're destroying evidence, sealing up old rooms. There are other keys, other records. My grandmother said some doors should stay locked." Jack helped her into a wheelchair, mind racing. 23 years of service had taught him to read between the lines, to hear what wasn't being said. Emma Thompson hadn't just stumbled onto corruption. She'd found something darker, something that had been growing beneath Cedar Grove's surface for decades. And now, watching Sarah check the hallway with the haunted eyes of a sister who never stopped searching, Jack realized this had become more than just a rescue. This was about justice for Jenny Martinez, for Katie Chen, for Agnes Thompson. The bloody key felt like a burning coal in his pocket. Some doors should stay locked, Emma's grandmother had warned, but sometimes Jack knew the only way to fight darkness was to open every door and let in the light, even if you weren't ready for what might come out. The safe house Marcus arranged turned out to be Barbara Wells' craftsman home on the outskirts of town. The librarian's living room had been transformed into an impromptu command center, with Emma's journal spread open on a coffee table, worn smooth by decades of use. My grandmother called it a visionaire cipher, Emma explained, her fingers tracing the neat rows of symbols in her journal. Still pale but stronger now, she sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by papers covered in her grandmother's precise handwriting. She learned it during her intelligence work in the war, said some secrets needed extra layers of protection. Jack studied the coded message they'd recovered from Emma's coat, comparing it to similar patterns in the journal. 23 years of reading smoke patterns and fire behavior hadn't prepared him for this kind of puzzle, but he recognized the methodical nature of the code. Like a fire, it followed rules. You just had to know how to read them. Barbara adjusted, her reading glasses pointing to a sequence of letters. Agnes showed me this system once, years ago. The key word shifts each letter in the message. Without knowing the key word, it's unbreakable, Sarah finished, her detective sister's influence showing. She hadn't left Emma's side since the hospital, protective instincts in full force. But Emma knows it, don't you? Emma nodded slowly. The last thing my grandmother said to me before the accident. She squeezed my hand 3 times and whispered, "Remember where we scattered the roses?" Her voice caught. I thought she was delirious from the pain, but the Morrison family plot, Barbara breathed. Agnes and her sister scattered rose petals there every Memorial Day. Said it was for the ones who never made it home. Jack watched understanding dawn on Emma's face. Morrison, that's the key word. The girl grabbed a pencil, hands shaking slightly as she began to decode the first line. Minutes stretched in tense silence as she worked, only the tick of Barbara's ancient grandfather clock marking time. Suddenly, Emma went very still. "Oh, God!" Sarah leaned forward. "What is it?" "Names, dates, just like the files in City Hall, but—" Emma swallowed hard. "These go back further, way further. The first entry is from 1962. She looked up at Jack, her eyes haunted. All these years, everyone thought the disappearances started with Jenny Martinez in 97. But according to this, Jenny was just when they got sloppy, when people started asking questions. The journal's pages rustled as Emma flipped through them, her grandmother's careful documentation revealing a pattern that spanned generations. Each entry was meticulously coded, protecting names that had been carefully erased from Cedar Grove's official records. "Here," Emma pointed to an entry from 1985. "Elizabeth Hayes, Victoria Hayes's older sister. Official record says she moved to Seattle for college. Never came back." Her finger traced down the page. But according to this, she was asking questions. About missing building permits, about private meetings in the City Hall basement. Then she just vanished. Jack felt the weight of the blood-stained key in his pocket. Their own flesh and blood. They covered it up. "Family loyalty only runs one way with people like that," Sarah said quietly, her thoughts clearly with her own sister. Barbara returned from her study, carrying a heavy ledger. "I've been keeping my own records. Every time something felt wrong. At City Hall, every time documents disappeared from the public archive." She opened the book, revealing newspaper clippings, notes, photographs. Agnes wasn't the only one watching. She was just the only one brave enough to do something about it. A sharp knock at the front door made them all freeze. Through the curtained window, Jack caught the silhouette of Detective Rivera, his stance urgent. Barbara let him in quickly, locking the door behind him. "We've got trouble," Marcus announced, without preamble. "Victoria Hayes just called an emergency council session. They're voting on immediate demolition of the old City Hall wing. Said there are structural concerns that can't wait for normal approval processes. The archives, Emma whispered. They know I took something. They're going to destroy everything. Jack stood, decision made. Not if we move first, he turned to Marcus. How long do we have? Meetings at 8 tonight. Demolition crews already on standby. Sarah checked her watch. 4 hours. Long enough. Jack pulled out the blood-stained key. Emma, we need everything you can decode from those notes. Every name, every connection. Sarah, call your old academy contacts. We need floor plans of City Hall, especially the basement. Marcus, the detective, smiled grimly. Already got a warrant ready. Just needed enough evidence to convince a judge. This journal might do it. Emma's hands shook as she worked on the code, but her voice was steady. There's something else. In my grandmother's last entry, something about the red door. She underlined it 3 times. Jack and Marcus shared a look. Sometimes in their line of work, coincidences weren't coincidences at all. The basement storage room, Barbara said suddenly. When they renovated in '95, they sealed off part of the old foundation. There was a door, painted red, said it led to nowhere, just old utility tunnels. But Agnes, she always said that door gave her bad dreams. Outside, thunder rolled across Cedar Grove, promising a storm. Jack checked his own watch, thinking of all the doors he'd broken down in 23 years of service. Sometimes to save lives, sometimes to expose what was hidden. Tonight, he suspected, they'd be doing both. Emma looked up from her journal, face set with determination that reminded Jack of another brave 16-year-old, lost too soon. I can. Decode faster, she said. Just promise me something. Promise me they won't get away this time. Jack thought of Agnes Thompson's accident, of Katie Chen's disappearance, of all the names in Emma's journal. Generations of secrets sealed behind a red door. They won't, he promised. Whatever's behind that door, it sees daylight tonight. The grandfather clock struck 4, its chimes echoing through Barbara's house like a countdown. In 4 hours, they'd either expose 60 years of buried secrets or join the long list of people who'd tried and failed. And somewhere in City Hall, behind a red door, the truth waited. The security footage from City Hall's east entrance showed Victoria Hayes entering at 2:47 a.m. 3 nights ago. Jack rewound it again, watching her path through the building's dim corridors. The timestamp jumped, 10 minutes missing. When the video resumed, Hayes was gone. 4th time this month, Sarah muttered, marking the date in her notebook. They'd commandeered a back office at Marcus's precinct, walls now covered with surveillance stills and building schematics. Always the same pattern. Always when the basement cameras malfunction. Jack studied the grainy image, thinking of Emma's words about things malfunctioning when they needed to. The camera's blank period was too precise, too consistent. Someone was editing the feeds. But why these specific nights? Got those dates you asked for, Marcus said, entering with a thick file. Every council meeting for the past year, cross-referenced with Hayes's late-night visits. He spread the papers across their makeshift investigation board. Patterns interesting. Every visit comes exactly 3 days before a major property vote. Sarah pointed to the most recent entry. Like tonight's emergency demolition meeting? Exactly. Marcus tapped the surveillance still. Whatever she's accessing down there, it's connected to these votes. But the basement archives are supposed to be just old permit records, tax files, which is exactly what Katie was investigating, Sarah cut in, her voice tight. Before she disappeared, Jack's phone buzzed Barbara Wells. He put it on speaker. Go ahead. Emma's decoded another section. The librarian's voice was urgent. You need to see this. It's about the building contracts from static cut through. The line, something about false walls and More interference. Jack, I think someone's... The line went dead. They moved fast. Years of emergency response training kicking in. Marcus called for backup while Jack and Sarah took the stairs two at a time, racing to the parking lot. Cedar Grove blurred past the truck's windows as Jack pushed the engine hard, lights flashing but siren off. No point announcing their approach. Barbara's house was dark when they arrived. The front door stood open, papers scattered across the porch. Inside, the living room showed signs of a struggle, overturned furniture, Emma's journal missing. A single page remained, trapped beneath the heavy grandfather clock, a hastily scrawled note in Emma's hand. Red door. Tonight. They're moving. Everything. Jack's radio crackled. Marcus arriving at the scene. Back streets clear, but there's fresh tire tracks. Getting forensics out here now. Sarah emerged from the kitchen, face grim. Barbara's gone too. Her car's still here. She held up a smashed cell phone. Found this in the garbage disposal. They were trying to destroy it. Jack examined the phone's cracked screen. The last unsent message was clear enough. Hayes, here, running. They're accelerating their timeline. Jack moved to the investigation. Materials still pinned to Barbara's walls. The demolition vote's not about destroying evidence. It's about moving it. They knew we were getting close. Sarah's eyes narrowed. The security footage gaps. They weren't editing the feeds. They were using them to coordinate, Jack nodded. Checking when the coast was clear to transfer whatever they're hiding behind that red door. He studied the building plans. The old utility tunnels Barbara mentioned. They must connect to something. Somewhere they could move files, records, or people. Sarah's voice was steel. We need to get into that basement now. Wait! Jack noticed something in the scattered papers. A City Hall maintenance log from 1995, the year of the renovation. A single entry was circled. Utility tunnel access, northwest corner, sealed due to structural concerns. Alternate route, boiler. Room B, that's our way in. He checked his watch, 6:45 p.m., just over an hour until the council meeting. Hayes doesn't know we found this. She'll be focused on the main archive room, the red door. Meanwhile, we come in through the back door. Sarah was already moving, checking her gear, like smoke testing a building. Jack's radio hummed again. Marcus, Jack, forensics found something. Tire tracks match a city maintenance van. And there's a work order logged for emergency repairs at the old Mason Street warehouse tonight. The pieces clicked. Mason Street on the edge of town, largely abandoned. Perfect place to store secrets. You're moving from one hiding place to another. Marcus, get units to the warehouse, but tell them to keep their distance. Hayes has people inside the department. We can't risk tipping our hand. Jack headed for the truck, Sarah right behind him. Sarah and I will take City Hall. If we're... Right. They'll be too busy moving their archive to expect anyone coming in through the utility tunnels. Jack? Marcus's voice was heavy with 20 years of homicide detective experience. If this goes bad, it won't. Jack thought of Emma's determination, of Barbara's careful records, of Agnes Thompson's final warning, of Katie Chen, who'd gotten too close to the truth. Not this time. They drove toward City Hall in tense silence, the setting sun painting Cedar Grove streets in shadows. The building loomed ahead, its limestone facade hiding decades of secrets. Jack touched the blood-stained key in his pocket, no longer evidence of just one crime, but a key to something much darker. Sarah checked her flashlight, her expression matching the one she wore during their toughest rescues. You know what Katie always said about corruption? The truth is like a fire. You can build walls around it, but it'll always find a way to burn through. Jack smiled grimly. If there was one thing a veteran firefighter knew, it was this. Sometimes, the only way to fight fire was to let it burn, controlled, directed, purposeful. Let it expose what was hidden in the dark. Tonight, Cedar Grove shadows would finally face the light, and somewhere in the city, in the back of a maintenance van, or a warehouse office, Emma Thompson and Barbara Wells were counting on that light reaching them in time. The utility tunnel's air was thick with decades of dust and decay. Jack's flashlight beam caught ancient pipes and conduits, their surfaces scarred with rust. Behind him, Sarah moved with the careful precision he'd drilled into her during confined space training. Every step had to be silent, every movement controlled. Their first sign that they weren't alone came at the tunnel's third junction. Fresh scuff marks on the concrete floor, a maintenance worker's clipboard forgotten in a corner, and most telling, a digital keypad lock on a door that, according to the 1995 plans, shouldn't exist. Jack. Sarah's whisper was barely audible. She pointed to a stack of building permits partially visible through the door's narrow window. The top sheet bore yesterday's date and Victoria Hayes's flowing signature. Before Jack could respond, a voice spoke from the shadows behind them. "Took you long enough to find it." They spun, lights ready, but the figure that emerged had his hands raised. Middle-aged, wearing a maintenance uniform, his face lined with the kind of exhaustion that came from carrying secrets too long. The name tag read, "Wilson." "Frank Wilson," he said quietly. "Building supervisor. Was wondering if someone would finally follow the breadcrumbs I've been leaving." "The clipboard," Sarah realized. "The work orders. You wanted us to find this place." Wilson nodded. "Been watching Hayes and her people for months, logging their movements, gathering proof." His eyes fell on the blood-stained key in Jack's hand. "Agnes Thompson tried to warn me last month, said she'd given her granddaughter evidence that could expose everything. Then the accident happened. Why come forward now?" Jack studied the man's face, reading the fear beneath his forced calm. "Because they're moving faster than I expected. That demolition vote tonight? It's not just about hiding evidence. They're erasing an entire shadow accounting system." Wilson pulled a USB drive from his pocket. Every crooked deal, every bribed official, every disappeared witness, all logged in a parallel set of books kept behind that door. Decades of corruption hidden in plain sight. Sarah took the drive. "Katie Chen. She found this too, didn't she?" Wilson's face fell. "She came to me for help. Said she'd traced irregular payments in the city's development contracts. I told her to wait, to be careful. Next day, she was gone." He swallowed hard. "I've carried that guilt for 2 years." A distant metallic clang echoed through the tunnels. Wilson tensed. "They're starting the transfer, using the old maintenance elevators to move everything to the warehouse." He checked his watch. Hayes called an early pre-meeting for 7:30. Wanted all council members present when the demolition crew discovers structural problems that require immediate action. Jack's mind raced. The building permits, the USB drive, Wilson's testimony, it was enough to force an investigation. But Emma and Barbara were still missing, and if Hayes succeeded in moving the evidence... "There's more," Wilson said, leading them to the locked door. "That key you're holding? It opens a filing cabinet in Hayes's private archive. Inside is a ledger, the original one, handwritten. Goes back to 1962 when her father was on the council. Every payment, every cover-up, every name." His voice dropped. "Including Elizabeth Hayes. Victoria's sister," Jack remembered. "The one who moved to Seattle." Wilson's laugh was bitter. "Elizabeth never left Cedar Grove. She's buried under the marina construction site. I helped pour the concrete myself. Back in '85. Didn't know then what I was helping cover up." His hands shook as he entered a code on the keypad. "Hayes keeps her sister's diary locked in that cabinet. Insurance, she calls it. Proof that even family isn't safe if they threaten the system." The door opened with a soft hiss. Beyond it lay a climate-controlled room filled with filing cabinets and computers, a modern archive hidden within the old building's bones. Wilson pointed to a cabinet in the corner, its lock matching Jack's key. "Whatever you're going to do," Wilson said, "do it fast. When Hayes realizes someone accessed this room..." He left the threat unspoken. Sarah was already copying files from the computers, while Jack worked on the cabinet lock. The key turned with a heavy click, revealing rows of meticulously organized folders. And there, in a red leather binding, Elizabeth Hayes's diary, the written confession of a dead woman, preserved. By the same people who killed her, Jack photographed every page, knowing each image was another nail in Hayes' coffin. But something else caught his eye, a recent addition to the files. Blueprints for the Mason Street warehouse with handwritten annotations. Loading dock schedules, security patrol routes. They're not just moving files, he realized. They're moving everything, setting up a new operation outside city limits. He showed the plans to Sarah. Look at these room dimensions. These aren't storage spaces, they're cells. Wilson nodded grimly. Hayes has bigger plans. Chief of Police is retiring next month. Mayor's term ends in January. She's positioning herself for a power grab, using everything in these files as leverage. Another clang, closer now. Wilson straightened. That's my signal. I need to be visible upstairs when Hayes arrives, or she'll know something's wrong. He headed for the door, then paused. Find the girls, please. I can't have any more ghosts. On my conscience. As Wilson's footsteps faded, Jack and Sarah worked faster. The scope of what they'd discovered was staggering. Not just corruption, but a decades-long criminal enterprise. A shadow government built on buried secrets and silenced voices. Sarah finished with the computers, tucking the USB drive safely away. Jack, Katie's name is in these files. Hayes ordered her elimination personally, called it a regrettable necessity. The words hung in the air like smoke. Jack thought of Emma and Barbara, wondered if Hayes was writing up their regrettable necessity orders right now. The countdown to the council meeting ticked in his head. Less than an hour left, time to turn up the heat. The anonymous threat letter appeared in Jack's locker just as the station's evening shift was changing. Typed on City Hall letterhead, 3 lines that made his blood run cold. Some fires can't be put out. Some questions shouldn't be asked. Ask Agnes Thompson. He'd barely finished reading when the station's power cut out. In the sudden darkness, Jack heard the equipment bay door grinding shut, followed by the distinct click of the emergency exits locking. Someone had overridden the security system. Sarah! His voice echoed through the darkened station. No response. She'd been checking the truck's rescue gear, preparing for their warehouse raid. Now there was only silence, broken by footsteps on the metal staircase, too heavy to be Sarah's. The beam of a flashlight cut through the darkness, held by a figure Jack recognized. Officer Mike Dawson, one of the cops from the hospital. His service weapon was drawn. You just couldn't let it go, could you, Jack? Mike's voice carried none of its usual warmth. 23 years on the job, respected by everyone. You could have retired a hero. Instead, you had to go digging where you don't belong. Where's Sarah? Jack kept his voice steady, thinking of the station's layout. In the dark, every piece of equipment could be either obstacle or cover. Safe. For now. Mike advanced slowly. Hayes says you've got something that belongs to her. A key, some files. Hand them over, walk away, and everyone goes home tonight. Jack's hand brushed the cold metal of a Halligan tool mounted on the wall. Like Jenny Martinez went home? Like Katie Chen? Necessary sacrifices. Mike's flashlight beams swept the room. Progress has a price, Jack. Hayes understands that. The old guard had to go for Cedar Grove to grow. You really think all those development contracts came clean? All that new money flowing into town? And the girls? Emma, Barbara, they part of the price too? A new voice answered from the shadows. They made their choice. Jack recognized the gravelly tone. Pete Harris, Mike's partner. Just like you're making yours. The Halligan felt solid in Jack's grip. 23 years of forcing doors had taught him the tool's perfect balance. In the dark, against armed opponents, it wasn't much. But a firefighter worked with what he had. Hayes sent cops to do her dirty work, Jack said, keeping them talking while he moved. That's new. Usually she handles problems more quietly. Times change, Mike replied. After tonight's vote, Hayes takes control of the entire emergency response system. Fire, police, EMT, all under one authority. No more jurisdictional issues. No more nosy firefighters poking around crime scenes. Jack thought of Wilson's words about Hayes's bigger plans. And you two? What's your reward for tonight? Chief and deputy chief, Pete said smugly. Once the current chief retires next month. Hayes keeps her promises. A faint sound caught Jack's attention, metal on metal, from the direction of the truck bay. Sarah was still here, still fighting. He just had to buy her time. Agnes Thompson. Jack raised his voice slightly, covering. Any noise Sarah might make. You push her down those stairs yourselves or just look the other way? Car accident, Mike corrected. Tonight, tragic. The old lady finally lost control on River Road. They'll find her car in the morning. His flashlight beam found Jack. Just like they'll find you in the station. Electrical fire. You were alone checking equipment. Very sad. Jack smiled in the darkness. One problem with that plan. Yeah? The Halligan flew through the air, hitting Mike's flashlight with practiced accuracy. In the sudden darkness, Jack moved on instinct, diving behind the engine as gunshots erupted. Glass shattered. Something metallic clanged. Then the sprinklers came on. Sarah's voice rang out from the control room. Drop your weapons! This whole place is on camera! Flashlight beams swept the bay. Station 7's full evening shift, led by Captain Martinez, weapons drawn. They'd come in through the maintenance tunnel Sarah had unlocked earlier, just in case things went wrong. On your knees, Martinez ordered. Hands where we can see them. Later, after Mike and Pete were in custody, after Sarah had hugged him hard enough to crack ribs, Jack found her in the locker room, soaking wet but alive. Got it all on video, she said, holding up her phone. Hayes's name, the threats, the whole. Confession, Marcus is getting warrants now. She paused. But Jack, they're going to find my sister's car, aren't they? Just like Agnes. Jack looked at his watch. 7:15. The council meeting would be starting soon, and somewhere in the city, Hayes was still moving her operation, still holding Emma and Barbara. Not if we find them first. He pulled out Wilson's warehouse plans. Hayes thinks she's shut us down. She won't be expecting anyone at Mason Street for hours. Sarah checked her gear with sharp, angry movements. They killed Katie. All. This time I thought maybe she really had just... But they killed her. Because she found the truth. Sarah. Jack waited until she met his eyes. We're going to find her. Whatever Hayes buried at that warehouse, we're digging it all up. Tonight. The threat letter lay crumpled on the floor. City. Whole letterhead now stained with sprinkler water. Hayes had meant it to frighten them. Instead, it had only proven what they already knew. Some fires couldn't be put out. Some questions had to be asked. And whatever answers waited at Mason Street. Warehouse, they would shake Cedar Grove to its foundations. The burner phone buzzed once in Jack's pocket, Marcus's emergency signal. They'd set up the secure phones after Wilson's warning about Hayes having access to official channels. One buzz meant urgent, but safe. Two meant compromised. Got a location? Marcus's voice was hushed when Jack answered. Emma managed to get a message out. They're holding her and Barbara in the warehouse's sub-basement. Hayes has some kind of command center down there, been running operations from it for years. Jack put the phone on speaker for Sarah's benefit as they crouched in the station's emergency response vehicle, parked 3 blocks from Mason Street. Emma's okay? Scared, but unharmed. She's smart. Convinced them she hadn't decoded most of the documents yet. Said she'd cooperate if they didn't hurt Barbara. A pause. Jack, that warehouse, it's not just a storage facility. Got an old-timer at the precinct to talk. Place used to be a private detention center back in the 60s. Hayes's father shut it down when he took office, but the cells are still there. Underground. Sarah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Like the room dimensions we saw in the plans. Exactly. And there's more. Been going through Wilson's files. Remember all those emergency response reorganization proposals Hayes kept pushing? They weren't about efficiency. She's been systematically positioning her people throughout every department. Police, fire, medical, anyone who might stumble across her operation. creating blind spots, Jack said, thinking of all the convenient jurisdictional issues that had hampered investigations over the years. How deep does this go? Deep. Enough that I can only trust 3 other detectives. We're ready to move on the warehouse, but Hayes has at least 6 corrupt cops on site, maybe more. A soft tap on the vehicle's back window made them both jump. Emma Thompson stood there, pale but determined, with Barbara Wells right behind her. Jack opened the door, questions flooding his mind, but Emma spoke first. We got out through the old sewer line. Barbara knew about it from the original building plans. She climbed in, helping the librarian follow. But we have to hurry. Hayes is moving everything tonight, not just the files. There are others down there, people they've been holding. How many? Sarah demanded. 3 that I saw. One of them... Emma's voice caught. One of them said she's been there since 2003. Sarah went very still. Katie? Barbara touched Sarah's shoulder gently. She's alive, Sarah. Weak, but alive. They've been keeping them there, using them as leverage against their families. Hayes calls them her insurance policies. The burner phone buzzed again, this time twice. Marcus's voice was urgent. Hayes knows they're out. She's accelerating. Everything. Just ordered the demolition crew to move in early, before the council meeting. She's going to bury the evidence and blame it on construction accidents. Jack checked his watch. 7:25. How long until the demolition team arrives? 15 minutes, maybe less. Jack, she's got some kind of dead man switch. If she doesn't input a code every hour, something happens at the warehouse. Wilson didn't know exactly what, but we can't risk it, Jack finished. He looked at Emma. The code you decoded from your grandmother's journal. Could there be something about the switch in there? Emma pulled a folded paper from her sock, the missing page from the journal. Last entry. Grandmother wrote about a failsafe, something in Hayes's private office. Said it was how they made sure no one could ever expose them, even if someone found the evidence. Barbara was already studying the coded message. It's a different cipher here. See how the pattern changes. Agnes was trying to hide this part, even from people who knew the first code. Can you break it? The librarian's eyes lit with recognition. The reference number? It matches an old book in the library's rare collection. Agnes used to check it. Out every month, same day. I always wondered, she wrote rapidly on the back of the paper, converting symbols to text. Got it. It's not just a code, it's instructions. The failsafe, the switch. It's all connected to the old building's power. Grid. Hayes modified it during the '95 renovation. That's why they needed the demolition, Emma realized. Cut power to City Hall, and whatever's waiting at the warehouse gets triggered automatically, Jack finished. Marcus, how many people can you get in position without being spotted? Maybe 10. Any more risks Hayes seeing us coming? Sarah started the engine. We're going to need more than 10. Jack thought for a moment, then reached for his radio. The old one, the unofficial channel that hadn't changed in 23 years. Station 7, this is Reeves. Anyone remember the Harbour Point fire in '02, when we had no backup, no power, and no choice? One by one, voices crackled back. Veterans and rookies. Every firefighter who'd ever worked under Jack's command. All volunteers, all ready. Good, Jack said, because we've got people trapped in a basement, a demolition crew on the way, and a corrupt politician about to bury 2 decades of crimes. Anyone up for a little overtime? The responses came back strong and clear. Station 7 was rolling out. Emma clutched her decoded papers. They'll be ready for us. Count on it, Jack agreed. But they're not ready for everything we're bringing. Hayes thinks she's burning her evidence? Fine. Let's show her what real firefighters can do when the heat comes down. The emergency vehicle pulled out, heading toward Mason Street. In its wake, engines and trucks from across Cedar Grove converged on silent routes, lights off, crews ready. 2 decades of buried secrets were about to meet the light. And somewhere in the warehouse's depths, Katie Chen waited, not knowing that her sister was finally coming to bring her home. City Hall's basement blueprints glowed on Jack's tablet as he and Marcus navigated the service corridors. Emma had marked the surveillance blind spots in red, using knowledge from her grandmother's notes. Hayes had cameras everywhere, but the old building's architecture created dead zones, pockets of shadow where the electronic eyes couldn't reach. "Wait," Marcus whispered, pressing against a wall as footsteps echoed ahead. Two maintenance workers passed, talking about the upcoming demolition. Jack recognized them from Wilson's files, not actual maintenance staff, but Hayes's people. Once they were gone, he checked the blueprint again. "Hayes' office should be through here," he murmured. "Emma said the fail-safe controls are hidden behind the painting of the town founders." "Classic," Marcus replied with grim humor. "Hide your kill switch behind the evidence of your family's corruption. Hayes's grandfather is in that painting." They reached the office door, solid oak, modern security lock. Marcus pulled out Wilson's keycard. Moment of truth. The lock clicked green. Inside, the office was a study in calculated intimidation. Awards and ceremonial keys lined the walls, testaments to Hayes's public persona. But Jack's attention went to the computer set up on her desk. 6 monitors showing feeds from across the city, street cameras, business security systems, even private surveillance networks. "She's tapped into everything," Marcus breathed, studying the displays. "Must have backdoor access to the whole city's security grid." Jack moved to the painting. A stern group of men in 1940s suits, including a younger version of Hayes's grandfather. The safe behind it was exactly where Emma said it would be, but something else caught his eye, a small red light in the corner of the frame. "Marcus," he called softly, "look at all the frames." The detective scanned the walls, realization dawning. Every picture, every award, every mounted certificate held the same tiny red light. Not just cameras, audio sensors too, judging by the configuration. "She's been recording everything," Marcus said. "Every meeting, every conversation, more blackmail material." Jack's radio crackled. Sarah speaking in coded phrases they'd worked out. "Package located, sub-level 3, guards changing in 5. They had minutes to find the failsafe controls before Hayes' demolition crew cut power to the building. Jack turned to the safe, remembering Emma's instructions. The combination was hidden in the painting itself. Dates worked into the background details by an artist paid to encode them. The safe opened with a soft hiss. Inside, a single leather-bound book lay on top of a complex electronic panel. Jack recognized Elizabeth Hayes's diary, the real one, not the copy they'd found earlier. The electronics beneath it looked custom-made, definitely not standard city infrastructure. "Got something?" Marcus called from the desk. He'd accessed Hayes's computer using Wilson's credentials. "Look at this email chain. She's been coordinating with someone outside Cedar Grove. Federal level, judging by the domain." Jack glanced at the screens. "We'll need it all. How fast can you copy?" A new image appeared on the center monitor. Live feed from the warehouse, showing Emma and Barbara in their cell. Except Jack had just left them safely hidden with Sarah's team. "It's a loop," he realized. "Old footage. They don't know the girls escaped." Marcus worked faster, downloading everything. "Got movement at the warehouse. Guards responding to something on the west side." Station 7's distraction. Jack smiled. Right on schedule. His people were drawing attention while Sarah's team prepared to breach from the east. The failsafe panel had 3 inputs, a key sequence, a manual override, and what looked like a biometric scanner. Hayes had built redundancy into her failsafe, no single point of failure. "Marcus," Jack's voice was tight, "these readings. The failsafe isn't just connected to the power grid. It's linked to some kind of gas system in the warehouse basement." The detective swore softly. "Dead man's switch with a revenge component. Power goes out, gas goes in. She's prepared to take everyone with her if she's exposed." Jack's radio crackled again. Sarah. "Guards neutralized. Moving on primary target." They were out of time. Jack studied the panel, thinking of 23 years of reading emergency systems, understanding fail-safes and backup protocols. Hayes was meticulous, thorough. She'd want complete control, which meant, here. He pointed to a maintenance port on the panel side. Emergency diagnostic connection. If we can't shut it down properly, we can short it out. Marcus was already pulling equipment from his bag. Might trigger alarms, though. Won't matter. Jack checked his watch. Demolition crew's about to cut power anyway. We just need to make sure this thing can't trigger when they do. As Marcus worked on the panel, Jack photographed every page of Elizabeth's diary, the real story of how Hayes's corruption began, written by its first victim. Evidence that even Hayes didn't dare destroy. A distant rumble shook the building. The demolition had started. Done, Marcus announced. Panels dead. Warehouse systems are isolated. Jack gathered their evidence as lights flickered overhead. In the security feeds, he caught glimpses of firefighters moving through the warehouse. Station 7 doing what they did best, saving lives, exposing what was hidden. Time to go, he said. Sarah's team will be reaching Katie soon. Hayes needs to see her whole system crumbling at once. They left the office as emergency lights kicked in, painting the corridors in red. Hayes had built her surveillance network to be her strength. Now, with every camera and microphone, she would watch her empire fall. And somewhere in the warehouse, a woman who'd been imprisoned for 20 years was about to see her sister again. The master key card Wilson had provided felt heavy in Sarah's hand as she approached the final security door. Behind her, Station 7's rescue team moved with practiced silence, their firefighting gear repurposed for this very different kind of rescue. The sub-basement's emergency lights cast everything in a crimson glow, making the corridor look like something from Sarah's nightmares about her sister's disappearance. 3 guards inside, Captain Martinez whispered, checking the thermal imaging device. 1 by the cells, 2 near the main console. Sarah nodded, thinking of the countless times she'd practiced this moment. 2 years of tactical training, preparing for the day she'd find Katie. Now, standing outside the door that separated her from her sister, she felt 20 years of grief and rage crystallize into cold purpose. The keycard worked, but something was wrong. The door opened too easily, the room beyond too quiet. Then Sarah saw the guard's smile. "Been expecting you," he said, and the trap sprung. Hidden panels in the walls slid open, revealing Hayes' private security team. Ex-military, according to Wilson's files. Sarah counted 8 armed men emerging from concealed positions. The guard who'd spoken held up a familiar phone. "Your friend Wilson," he explained. "He's been very cooperative since we found his family an hour ago." Sarah's mind raced. The thermal imaging had been wrong, or more likely, Hayes had tech that could fool it. A setup from the start, but they'd planned for this too. "Now," she said quietly. Above them, the ceiling erupted. Station 7's ventilation team, the best confined space rescue unit in 3 counties, dropped through suddenly opened maintenance hatches. The surprise bought precious seconds, and Sarah's people used them well. The room dissolved into chaos. She moved through the fight with singular focus, heading for the cells. The master key card would open them all, but she knew which one held Katie. 20 years of investigative work, following every lead, had taught her to read the signs. The cell at the end, better monitored than the others. The one they guarded. Most carefully, a guard blocked her path. Sarah recognized him from Hayes's security detail at City Hall. He raised his weapon, but she was already moving, using the close-quarters combat techniques Marcus had taught her. The gun clattered away, and she left him gasping on the floor. The cell door opened with a heavy clang. Katie Chen lay on a narrow bed, turned away from the door. Too thin, her black hair streaked with grey, but alive. At the sound of the door, she spoke without turning. "Right on schedule, Victoria. Here to gloat about the council meeting?" "Katie." Sarah's voice broke on the name. Her sister went very still. Slowly, as if moving through a dream, Katie turned. Their eyes met for the first time in 20 years. "Sarah?" The reunion lasted seconds. All they could spare. The fighting behind them was intensifying. Martinez's voice cut through the chaos. "Sarah, we need to move." Katie was weak, but determined. Sarah helped her up, supporting her weight. "Other prisoners," Katie managed. "3 cells down. Hayes keeps them." "We've got them," Sarah assured her. "Station 7's getting everyone out. Jack's team disabled the failsafe. It's over." Katie's laugh was bitter. "It's never over. Hayes has contingencies. Why do you think she kept us alive? We're her insurance policy. If anything happens to her..." A new alarm blared, not the building system, but something deeper, older. Katie's face went pale. "No, she's activated the overflow pumps, the sub-basement. She's going to flood it." Water was already seeping under doors, trickling from vents. Hayes' final trap turned the old detention center into a tomb. "Martinez!" Sarah shouted. "Get those people out! We've got incoming water!" The captain was already moving, directing teams to the other cells. Sarah heard the successive booms of doors being breached, the calls of rescuers finding survivors. But the water was rising faster than it should, pressure building behind old walls. "Drainage tunnels," Katie said urgently. "Under the cells, maintenance access. If we can reach..." Sarah understood. The same tunnels they'd used to infiltrate City Hall might save them here. She keyed her radio. "Jack, we need a path through the drainage system east side of the building." His response was immediate. "On it. Marcus has the city plans. Get to Junction 23. We'll meet you there." The water reached their ankles, then their knees. Sarah half-carried Katie toward the maintenance access, following Martinez's team as they guided other prisoners. Behind them, Hayes' security forces were abandoning their posts, fleeing the rising flood. 20 years. 20 years of searching, hoping, fighting. Sarah wasn't losing her sister again. Not to Hayes, not to a flood, not to anything. They reached the access panel as the water hit waist level. Beyond it, a narrow tunnel led into darkness, into hope. Sarah Chen had walked into that basement as a firefighter on a rescue mission. She would walk out as a sister who'd kept her promise. The water could have its empty cells. They were taking their people home. The digital evidence from Hayes' computer flashed across Marcus's tablet as he ran, illuminating the drain tunnel's wet walls. Decades of corruption compressed into megabytes, wire transfers, surveillance footage, blackmail files, names of officials, judges, police chiefs, a digital spiderweb with Victoria Hayes at its center. "Server rooms flooding," Jack's voice crackled through the radio. "Water's at 6 feet and rising. Wilson says there's a backup system, but static cut him off." The water was affecting communications. "Junction 23 ahead," Marcus called to Sarah's group, splashing through knee-deep water. "Turn left at the..." "Wait!" He grabbed Sarah's arm, pointing to a maintenance marking on the wall. "This isn't 23. They've renumbered the tunnels." Katie Chen, still leaning on her sister, spoke up. "Hayes. She changed the drainage maps after the 95 renovation. Real Junction 23 is 2 levels down." The water was rising faster now, churning with debris from the flooding basement above. Marcus checked his tablet's map against Katie's directions. If she was right, they had maybe 10 minutes before the lower tunnels flooded completely. "Martinez?" Sarah called into her radio. "Status?" The captain's response was broken, but clear enough. "Got 6 out. 2 teams still below. Hayes people." "Say again." "Hayes security. They're trapped. Lower level." Sarah met Marcus's eyes. Even Hayes' own people were expendable to her. The detective nodded grimly. "Go. Get Katie and the others out. I'll guide Martinez's teams to the trapped guards." "Detective?" Katie's voice was weak but urgent. "Server room, hidden partition, behind the north wall. Hayes keeps her real records there, 20 years of proof, everything she made us witness." Marcus understood. The files on his tablet were just the surface. The real evidence, the testimony of Hayes' prisoners, was trapped in that flooding basement. Sarah passed Katie to another firefighter. "Get them out. I'm going with Marcus." "Sarah, no." Katie tried to grab her sister's arm. 20 years, Katie. 20 years she kept you down here, kept all of you, making you watch while she corrupted our whole town. Sarah checked her gear. I'm not leaving until we have everything we need to bury her. The sisters' eyes met in the dim tunnel. After a moment, Katie nodded. Third server bank, red cabinet, the password. She managed a small smile. It's Elizabeth. Hayes never changed. Too arrogant to think anyone would get this far. Marcus's tablet chirped. An urgent message from Jack. The demolition crew had breached the main power conduits. City Hall was going dark, sector by sector. Once the power failed completely, the evidence would be lost forever. 5 minutes, he said. Maybe less. Sarah was already moving. That's 4 minutes more than Hayes deserves. They fought their way through rising water, following Katie's directions. The lower tunnels were a maze, but Marcus had spent his career mapping Cedar Grove's shadows. He knew where Hayes would hide her most damning secrets. The server room door was half submerged when they reached it. Inside, rows of equipment hummed their last songs as water crept up their frames. Sarah went straight to the north wall, while Marcus downloaded everything he could from the still-functioning systems. Here, Sarah had found the hidden panel. Behind it, a red cabinet glowed with active hard drives. 20 years of testimony. 20 years of truth. Marcus plugged in his backup drive as Sarah entered the password. Elizabeth, Hayes' greatest failure, now helping to expose her greatest crimes. The files transferred agonizingly slowly. Water reached their waists, then their chests. Equipment sparked and died around them, but the red cabinet kept humming, protected by its waterproof housing. Time, Marcus warned. Building powers failing. Almost. Sarah watched the progress bar. Got it! The lights went out. In the darkness, they heard the rush of water finding new paths, new spaces to fill, but the evidence was secure. Hayes' prisoners had finally been heard. Now they just had to survive long enough to make sure everyone else heard them too. The recording device in Jack's pocket captured every word as Victoria Hayes strutted into the emergency council meeting, 15 minutes early. Her heels clicked against marble floors, soon to be demolished, her perfect composure masking the desperation Jack had learned to recognize in arsonists watching their own fires burn. Emergency session called to order, Hayes announced to the gathered council members, her voice carrying the authority of 3 generations of Cedar Grove power. Given the structural engineer's urgent report, we'll dispense with normal procedures. Actually, Jack said from the doorway, let's follow procedure exactly. Hayes froze. Behind her, council members murmured as firefighters from Station 7 filed into the chamber, positioning themselves at every exit. Marcus entered last, holding his badge high. Victoria Hayes, the detective's voice filled the chamber. You're under arrest for conspiracy, kidnapping, and murder. Hayes laughed, but Jack caught the slight tremor in her perfectly manicured hands. This is absurd. We have a critical infrastructure vote. You mean the vote to demolish evidence? Jack moved forward, the recording device transmitting everything to Sarah's secure server. Or should we discuss what's really in that basement? Before it floods? Floods? A council member stood. What floods? The ones she triggered trying to drown her prisoners, Marcus answered, including Katie Chen, who, by the way, is currently giving her statement at the state police headquarters. Hayes' composure cracked, just for a moment. You're lying. The failsafe is disabled, Jack finished, along with the gas system you rigged to kill everyone if you were exposed. Tell me, Victoria, did your sister Elizabeth figure out that part of your plan before you buried her under the marina? The council chamber erupted in shock. Hayes spun toward the main door, but found it blocked by Captain Martinez. Every escape route cut off. Every contingency failed. You have no proof, she snarled, but her eyes kept darting to the windows, searching for options. Jack pulled out his phone, playing the security footage they'd recovered. Hayes' own cameras had documented everything. The secret meetings, the threats, the movements of disappeared witnesses. 20 years of corruption, captured by her own surveillance network. Your grandfather started it, didn't he? Jack kept his voice calm, reasonable, the recording device catching every word. Using City Hall's basement for private detention back in the 60s. But you modernized the operation, made it digital, efficient. Progress requires sacrifice, Hayes snapped, her mask finally cracking. This town was dying before my family took control. Everything I did was for Cedar Grove's future, like sacrificing your sister. Elizabeth was weak. She would have destroyed everything we built, just like that Thompson girl, like Katie Chen, idealistic fools who couldn't see the bigger picture. Marcus moved closer, handcuffs ready. The bigger picture. Like the federal contacts we found in your files, the ones helping you expand your operation across state lines. Hayes smiled suddenly, and Jack felt a chill. She was cornered, but something in her expression. You think this ends with me? She laughed. Cedar Grove is just the beginning. There are others in every state, people who understand that real power requires absolute control. Even if you arrest me, even if you expose everything. The windows exploded inward. State police tactical teams rappelled into the chamber as Hayes lunged for something in her jacket. But Jack had spent 23 years reading Fire and Smoke, reading the signs of imminent flashover. He was moving before she could reach the weapon. They hit the ground as shots rang out. Hayes' last hidden security team trying to extract her. But Station 7 and Marcus had planned for this. Every angle covered, every contingency countered. It's over, Victoria, Jack said quietly, holding her down as Marcus moved in with the cuffs. Cedar Grove is taking itself back. Hayes glared up at him, her carefully maintained facade finally shattered. My grandparents built this town. We own it. We own all of you. No, Jack replied, thinking of Emma's courage, of Katie's resilience, of Sarah's determination, of every person who'd fought to expose the truth. Cedar Grove belongs to its people, and they're not afraid anymore. The recording device caught Hayes' last words as Marcus led her away, a string of names and threats that would take investigators months to unravel. But Jack wasn't worried. They had the evidence. They had the witnesses. Most importantly, they had broken the fear that had kept Cedar Grove silent for so long. Outside, emergency lights painted the gathering crowd in red and blue. Reporters were arriving, drawn by the state police presence. Soon, the whole story would break. Hayes' empire would crumble in the light of day. Jack touched his radio. Sarah, we're clear here. Hayes is in custody. Copy that. His rookie's voice was thick with emotion. Katie's testimony is recorded. She wants to know if you'll come see her. Says she owes you a 20-year late thank you. Jack watched Hayes being led to a waiting police car, thinking of all the lives her family had destroyed, all the people who'd disappeared trying to expose the truth. Tell her thank you can wait, he replied. Right now, Cedar Grove needs to hear her story, all their stories. The recording device clicked off, its memory full, but the truth it contained would echo through Cedar Grove for generations to come. The press release hit every major news outlet simultaneously, its carefully crafted words spreading through Cedar Grove like wildfire. Marcus had insisted on controlling the initial narrative. Too many powerful people were implicated to risk the story being twisted or buried. Breaking news. Multi-decade criminal enterprise exposed in Cedar Grove. Local officials arrested in connection with kidnapping. Corruption investigation. Jack watched the courthouse steps from Engine 4's cab as reporters swarmed around Marcus. The detective handled their questions with practiced calm, each response further cementing Hayes' downfall. At this time we can confirm that Victoria Hayes and 12 other city officials have been taken into custody. Yes, we have recovered multiple victims from an underground detention facility. State and federal investigations are ongoing. Sarah sat beside Jack, holding a copy of the press release. Her other hand gripped her phone where Katie was on speaker, helping fact-check every detail before it went public. 20 years of enforced silence were ending, word by carefully chosen word. Channel 7's running the footage from City Hall, Katie reported. Her voice was stronger now, steel returning after years of captivity. Hayes's confession is playing, on repeat. Social media's exploding. The press release had been deliberate in its scope, naming only those already in custody, hinting at the broader conspiracy without tipping off Hayes's federal contacts. But the surveillance footage, the recovered files, the victims' testimonies, those would come out gradually, too overwhelming to be buried. Chief Thompson's making a statement, Sarah noted, watching the courthouse doors open. Agnes Thompson's replacement had been one of the few senior officials not implicated in Hayes's network. His face was grim as he approached the microphones. 4 generations, Cedar Grove's emergency services have operated under a shadow of corruption and coercion, he began. Today, thanks to the courage of our firefighters, police, and most importantly our citizens, that shadow has been lifted. Jack's radio crackled, Captain Martinez coordinating with state police as they secured City Hall. Jack, you need to see this. Hayes's people tried to burn files before we got here, but they missed something, a lot of somethings. How bad? Remember, Wilson's USB drive? This is bigger. We're finding documents dating back to the 50s. Looks like Hayes's grandfather kept records of everything, probably as insurance against his own partners. Birth certificates, death certificates, some of them altered. Jack understood the implications. Hayes hadn't just corrupted Cedar Grove's present, her family had rewritten its past. How many other victims were hidden in those files? How? Many families still didn't know the truth about their missing loved ones. Sarah's phone buzzed with an update from Emma. The teenager had become the unofficial coordinator for other survivors coming forward, using her grandmother's old library connections to create a secure communication network. 3 more families have come forward, she reported. Their stories match the timeline in Hayes's files, and Jack, they're ready to talk. The press release had opened the floodgates. Decades of enforced silence were breaking, story by story. On the courthouse steps, Marcus was now reading the names of known victims, each one a blow against the wall of fear Hayes had built around Cedar Grove. Jenny Martinez, Elizabeth Hayes, Katie Chen. Each name brought more people forward, more pieces of the puzzle falling into place. Jack watched faces in the growing crowd, saw the moment recognition turned to resolution. These were Cedar Grove's people, finally free to reclaim their town's truth. His radio crackled again, Wilson this time, his voice thick with emotion. Just found something in Hayes's private vault. Letters. Hundreds of them, never delivered. From prisoners to their families, she kept them all like trophies. Get them to Marcus, Jack ordered. Every family deserves to know. Everything comes into the light now. The press release was just the beginning. Its carefully chosen words had cracked Hayes's facade, but the real story of Cedar Grove would be told through 1,000 smaller revelations. Through reunited families and delivered letters, through truth finally spoken aloud. Sarah touched his arm, pointing to the courthouse doors. Katie was emerging, leaning on Emma for support but standing tall. After 20 years in Hayes's shadow, she was ready to step into the light. And Cedar Grove, watching through 100 camera lenses, began to remember how to speak without fear. TD Medal of Valor felt heavy against Jack's chest as he stood before the newly formed Cedar Grove Ethics Commission. 3 weeks had passed since Hayes's arrest, and the town was still coming to terms with the scope of her crimes. The medal ceremony had been Marcus's idea, a public statement that doing the right thing mattered again in Cedar Grove. The evidence. Recovery team has completed their analysis of City Hall's basement, Marcus reported to the commission. The detective looked tired but satisfied, his usual casual demeanor replaced by formal precision. We've identified 47 victims spanning 3 generations of Hayes family control. 32 survivors have come forward. The remaining 15, he paused, letting the impact sink in. We're working with families on proper burial arrangements. Jack watched the commissioners' faces. None of them had held power under Hayes. That had been a strict requirement for the new oversight body. Emma's grandmother Agnes, still recovering, but sharp as ever, sat in the chair reserved for citizen representatives, and the corruption within emergency services. Commissioner Chen, Katie and Sarah's father, asked. His appointment had been unanimous, his family's suffering giving him unique insight into the importance of accountability. Complete restructuring is underway, Jack replied. Every department head is being reviewed. Every promotion, every transfer. Under Hayes' tenure is being investigated. He touched the medal. But more importantly, we're implementing new protection protocols for whistleblowers. What happened to Katie, to all of Hayes' victims? It can't happen again. Agnes Thompson leaned forward. Tell us about the new emergency response integration system, Chief Reeves. Jack still wasn't used to the title. He'd finally accepted the promotion, understanding that sometimes leadership meant more than being first through the door. Total transparency between departments, but with independent oversight. No single person can control access or operations. Every call, every response, is logged in a public database. And the old tunnels? Another commissioner asked, being properly mapped and secured. We're converting parts of the network into emergency evacuation routes, with multiple access points and constant monitoring. No more shadows for secrets to hide in. The commission chambers, temporarily housed in the public library, while City Hall underwent renovation, fell silent as Marcus distributed his latest report. Jack knew what they were reading. The first comprehensive list of Hayes' federal contacts. The investigation had gone national, with 3 congressional committees now involved. There's something else, Marcus added. He nodded to his assistant, who wheeled in a cart laden with evidence boxes. We found these in Hayes' private vault. Letters, photos, personal effects, everything she took from her prisoners. We've begun returning them to families. Agnes Thompson touched a locket that had recently been returned to her, a family heirloom Hayes had taken as a trophy. And Victoria Hayes, her sentencing? No deals, Marcus said firmly. She tried to bargain with information about her federal connections, but we already had everything from her files. The DA is seeking maximum penalties on all counts. Jack thought of Hayes in her holding cell, her power stripped away, her carefully constructed world crumbling. She'd refused to speak after her arrest, but her silence didn't matter anymore. Her victims were speaking for her, their testimonies painting a picture of generational abuse of power that had nearly destroyed Cedar Grove's soul. Chief Reeves, Commissioner Chen said, your Medal of Valor citation mentions extraordinary courage in exposing systemic corruption. But there's more to this story, isn't there? Jack looked at the medal, remembering the ice rescue that had started everything. Courage came from a lot of places, sir, from Emma Thompson, refusing to let her grandmother's sacrifice be forgotten. From Sarah Chen, never giving up on her sister. From every victim who survived and every family that kept searching. He touched the medal again. This belongs to all of them. Agnes Thompson smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Then perhaps it's time we heard their stories properly, not as victims, but as the heroes who helped save Cedar Grove from itself. The commission chambers filled with murmurs of agreement. Outside, through the library's windows, Jack could see Station 7's newly repaired equipment bay. The station house gleamed with fresh paint, its doors open to the community it served. No more closed doors, no more buried secrets. Cedar Grove was learning to be transparent again, one truth at a time. The new Station 7 group photo captured everything that had changed in Cedar Grove over the past month. Jack studied it as it was being hung in the station's renovated common room, replacing the old image that had included two of Hayes's corrupt officers. In the new photo, Sarah stood beside her sister Katie, both wearing dress uniforms. Katie had accepted a position as the station's new community liaison, turning her experience into a force for change. Emma Thompson and her grandmother, Agnes, were in the photo too, honorary members of Station 7, after their role in exposing the conspiracy. Emma had started a youth outreach program, working with other survivors to help Cedar Grove's next generation understand the importance of speaking up against corruption. "Quite a change," Marcus said, joining Jack at the photo. The detective had become a regular presence at the station, the old barriers between departments falling away. "Hard to believe it's only been a month." "Sometimes change comes all at once," Jack replied, thinking of that morning on the ice that had started everything. Once people lose their fear, truth has a way of spreading fast. The station's morning briefing room was filling up, not just with firefighters, but with community members. Part of the new transparency initiatives included weekly public meetings, letting citizens see exactly how their emergency services operated. Barbara Wells was there, her library now partnering with the Department on Information Accessibility projects. Wilson, cleared of any wrongdoing and reinstated as building supervisor, brought updates on City Hall's renovation. Even Katie Chen's support group for Hayes survivors had a regular spot on the agenda. "Chief," Sarah appeared at Jack's elbow. "You're going to want to see this." She led them to her desk, where she'd laid out the morning's Cedar Grove Gazette. The headline made Jack smile. "Final Hayes property seized historic marina to become Memorial Park." "They found Elizabeth," Sarah said quietly. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed Katie's testimony. They're moving her to the proper cemetery next week, next to her mother. Hayes' family plot is being repurposed as part of the memorial. Jack thought of that blood-stained key that had started their investigation, how it had quite literally unlocked decades of buried truths. Elizabeth would have liked that, her sister's legacy being turned into something healing. "Speaking of healing," Marcus added, "got the final numbers from the Victim Compensation Fund. Federal seizure of Hayes' family assets plus the civil forfeitures. Every survivor's getting proper restitution, plus funding for ongoing counseling, job training, whatever they need to rebuild." The morning briefing began, but it was different now. Captain Martinez still ran through the day's assignments and safety protocols, but there were new faces at the table. Community volunteers learning emergency response procedures, survivors training to become first responders themselves, turning their darkest experiences into tools for helping others. "One more thing," Martinez announced. "As of this morning, the last of Hayes' federal contacts has been taken into custody. Boston office just confirmed the network is officially dismantled." A cheer went up from the assembled group. Jack watched Katie squeeze her sister's hand, saw Emma hug her grandmother. Small gestures of relief, of closure, of hope. The station. 7 photo watched over them all. Not just a record of personnel, but a testament to change, to healing, to a community learning to trust itself again. "You know what Katie said to me yesterday?" Sarah spoke softly to Jack. "She said maybe Hayes did us a favor in the end, showed us exactly how much strength we had hidden inside ourselves. How many heroes were just waiting for their moment to stand up." Jack looked at his people, not just the firefighters, but everyone in that room. Each face in the photo represented a choice, a moment when fear lost its power against truth. Cedar Grove was more than its secrets now. It was its survivors, its truth-tellers, its rebuilders, and Station 7, as always, would help light the way forward. The Lake Morrison Memorial plaque caught the morning sun as Jack Reeves stood at the spot, where everything had changed. Winter had given way to spring, the ice long melted, but he could still see Emma Thompson's rescue as clearly as if it were happening now. The plaque's bronze surface told a different story now, not just of one rescue, but of an entire community's salvation. "In honor of those who refused to let truth stay buried," he read aloud, "and to all who helped Cedar Grove find its way back to the light." Behind him, Sarah and Katie Chen were leading a training session for new emergency responders. Emma Thompson was there too, her grandmother Agnes watching proudly as her granddaughter taught others about the importance of standing up against corruption. The lake that had almost claimed her life had become a symbol of rebirth. Station 7's sirens sounded in the distance, not for an emergency, but as a daily reminder that help would always come, that some things in Cedar Grove had never been broken. Truth, like ice, had a way of preserving what lay beneath. But spring always came, bringing with it the courage to face what had been frozen in darkness.